Welcome everyone to the Yoga Samadhi Studio and Hermitage live stream. This will be my last teaching here for a while. I think Ajahn Cunda, as I've prepared many of you, is returning. On April 5th he'll be here for the first Yoga Samadhi. He'll return the evening of April 3rd. If all goes according to plan. He's coming down from Canada. And Ajahn Titapanya is also departing tomorrow morning, or right at noon. So our tenure here is coming to a close. And but Ajahn Kaspo is the stalwart. He's going to be staying on. And he'll be here with Tan Tisero, who is joining us April 1st. He's a monk from Abhayagiri. So we will have a bit of a guided meditation, and if everyone can get into a comfortable position. Having a sense of your body as it's sitting, or perhaps standing or lying down. Feeling the earth beneath your body, a grounded sense. Can begin to be aware of your sense faculties, the way that you are bringing in your experiences from your senses. Even though your eyes are closed, you may still see some light through your eyelids. Might be a particular smell, or often our hearing is something that we attend to a little more. And once we shut out the visual sense, then our minds start to pick up on those senses that we often are not as attuned to. As many of you know, there are 6 senses the Buddha teaches about. So not just the sense of sight and sound, smelling, taste, and touch, but there is the sense of the mind. So for example, with the mind you can have all of the senses represented. You can imagine smells, tastes, especially sounds, and very frequently visual images within your own mind. So often we can become quite unaware of these 5 bodily senses and forget about the sense of the mind that is actually operating as we're thinking, moving along, sometimes bumbling along from one world to the next. So we want to try to be also aware of the movement of the mind, the sense of the mind. So you'd like to use a anchor for yourself, something to pay attention to while you're sitting here. I'm going to suggest in this meditation that we use sound. Sound is not always a very easy object of meditation. So if any of you have ever attuned to what is called the nada sound, that can be very helpful. I use this quite often in my practice. The nada sound is also called the sound of silence. And it is sort of a high-pitched frequency you can try to attune to. Some people hear this very loudly in their ears, and it's can be an annoyance to them. For others, it's an ethereal sound, something that they enjoy. And for others, they have perhaps no idea what I'm talking about. And for those who've never heard this sound, it's possible it's been there the whole time, but you just don't recognize it because it's so constant. And so what I'd like to suggest is if you have trouble hearing this, you can also experiment with just listening to the sounds in the room, and also experiment with when there is no sound, the space between sounds. One thing that will help you in this meditation is reminding yourself that everything belongs. So you're not fighting with your attention. When it comes to sound, you're not trying to keep other sounds away. And so if someone is breathing or moving, or you hear a car, or there's a fan or something like that, you're working with a sense of including that, which would include my voice, for example. But if you can bring your mind to the nada sound, and try to do that for the rest of the meditation. If you can hear this ringing sound, I just want to remind you that it has many pitches. It can be low-pitched, high-pitched, can be in the right ear, can be in the left ear. It can move from the right to the left. It can feel like it's in the middle of the head. So try not to argue with that sound if you hear it. Just see if you can rest your attention on it. And if it changes, that's okay. If your awareness has gone out, just gently bringing it back. So again, bringing your mind back to awareness. Awareness of sound. And as the meditation is drawing to a close, so you have a sense of how your mind was with examining sound, being aware of sound, using sound as a meditation object. Before we get up and stretch, I was just wondering if anybody had any questions or comments about that, if that was new for anyone, using sound as a meditation object, or what I was actually talking about with what's called the nada sound, what medical professionals will perhaps call tinnitus. Is there, was this new to most people, or are there people who've practiced this before? Just wondering if... What's that? Yeah? New to you, yeah.
New to me also.
Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering if, just a raise of hands, just out of curiosity, how many of you actually could hear what I was describing with like tinnitus or the nada sound? You could hear the nada sound. It was a little bit hard. I realized afterwards, that's good, a few of you, that the fan was going and it was going to be hard. It often requires a bit of, you need to be kind of in a quieter room with the windows shut. But for some people, it's loud enough they can hear it. I can hear it most of the time. And for other people, they can't hear a thing. Yeah, Colleen?
I know that there was a monk at one point who led us in a meditation here on the sound of silence. Do you remember who that was?
Ajahn uses it as a meditation object. Lumpur Sumedho uses it as a meditation object. Those are the two primary people. I think there's others who've caught on to that and use it as well. It's often helpful as a way to cut through thought. If you tend to think a lot, if you're in your head a lot, then it's not too far from your head in terms of sound and the sort of the sense of being stuck up here. But just the nature of the nada sound, if one can hear it, this is kind of high-pitched sound. It's very continuous, so it just keeps going. It doesn't, and it does, I've noticed, fluctuate when I used it. And one of the people who actually wrote a book on it many years ago, who's passed away a while ago, often says to pay attention to the higher pitches. I don't know how essential that is, but I've also found that it's much more predominant for me in my right ear, and so I sometimes need to lend more attention to the center of my head or somewhere, so I'm hearing both ears, both of the sound in both ears. But yeah, I found it quite helpful at times, and but it's not as, there is one of the drawbacks is it isn't an object where you have as much of a palpable sense of your body, and so that's one sort of deficit, is that I know that it can be used for long periods of time, but I think for myself it's helpful to continue using like a meditation object like the breath or something that's still grounding me in the body in certain ways. But I remember Lumpur Sumedho, he's used this for many, many years as a primary meditation object, and he kind of discovered it one day just walking. It just kind of, he just heard it. And I would say the same thing for myself, except I had been hearing it for many years. I just actually thought it was, I think I had told some of you before, the sound of silence. I thought that actually there was this kind of sound on the planet that was present, and I didn't know it was coming from me. So then I eventually realized that for some of us we have it. I don't know. How many people here hear no ringing in their ears ever? Yeah? It's just silence. Okay. Perhaps the two youngest people in the room. Yeah. So yeah, just something to experiment with. But also just to say you don't have to use the nada sound. You can also just use any sound that you're hearing. So you can use the birds or just a fan or whatever it might be. You can just attune to any sounds, and your mind is just basically like a radar dish or something. It's just receiving that. And then what becomes more interesting with it is that you try to, just similar to the breath, you try to use the beginnings and endings of sound and the space between the sounds. You start to notice that more, and then it kind of helps you gain an interest in that, but also see that sound is just another object of arising and ceasing. And so you're not kind of getting excited about it, or what's that bird, or what kind of car was that, or whatever. You're just seeing the sound as sound in it of itself, rather than kind of thinking about it too much or getting distracted by it. It's just kind of arising and ceasing, just like the breath. So I've been reflecting more recently, this last week, about my time here at the Pacific Hermitage, and it's pretty much almost exactly a year that I was here. I left for about 4 months during what we call the Vasa period, which is the rainy season, but it's not so rainy here in July, August, September, October. So yeah, it's been quite an excellent experience for me, and I've lived with six different monks during that time here, and so that was also quite a special experience. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to have the sort of sort of enjoy the tradition of the Pacific Hermitage as much as the other monks did, because I sometimes have trouble with walking long distances. And so I tried the alms round here for the first couple of weeks, and then that was my feet weren't doing so well with that. So I stayed back for basically an entire year, while all the other monks I lived with went on alms round, and so I enjoyed receiving the alms food, but I didn't have as many interactions with all of you here. So that's one of my main regrets. But as many of you know, there's, with the body, we have to surrender to it. We can't force it to do things that it's incapable of. So I think, this time has been quite helpful for me. It's been very beneficial. I have a lot of appreciation, gratitude for Ajahn Cunda, having spent over a decade of his life cultivating the community here, cultivating bringing the Dhamma here to White Salmon and to Washington and the Portland area. And I remember, with Ajahn Cunda, he had quite a strong presence at Abhayagiri, as you would likely imagine. And he was a really strong presence there. But it eventually became evident that it would be helpful for him to actually start a community, start something on his own. And so I see the fruits of this, and the fruits of all of you who've participated and been a part of the community here. And one thing about that is monks can kind of come to a place, but they can't actually live in a place without a community. They can't live in a place without support. It's impossible. And the Buddha set it up that way so that the monks need that mutual support and help, so that there's a mutual feedback that occurs. Helpfulness and kindness, generosity and gratitude, all of those are qualities that open up, because the Buddha required that monks not become too independent. We can't cook for ourselves. We have to receive alms food. We can't use money. So this requires an interdependence, dependence on kindness, really. So as much as it is also gratitude for Ajahn Cunda, it's also gratitude for the community that is here, for all of you who are part of the Pacific Hermitage, part of the family who supports the Hermitage. And there's so many people from very far away, and then there is this local community that's here, that's so important. It's such a huge aspect of the Hermitage. And I'd say that initially the Pacific Hermitage was requested to be here by Portland Friends of the Dhamma and members of that group and other members in Portland who were interested and keen on having the monks close to Portland. But it's quite nice that in a way where the Pacific Hermitage settled, it ended up very much being a part of the White Salmon community. And that became essentially the primary community of support for the Hermitage. And in a way, that's just a beautiful, kind of amazing thing. Because I don't think before the monks came here, there wasn't anything here. There were some aspects of people practicing in some way or another. There was this studio. The fact that it had the word samadhi in it was quite special. One of the reasons, actually, why I think it is one of the reasons why the Pacific Hermitage is here. I think Ajahn Cunda said when he came into town, he saw yoga studio, yoga samadhi. Oh, that's wow. So he's pointed to that as one of the signs that actually said, oh, maybe this is maybe a good place to settle. It was also one of the criteria was like, how are the people who live in the town? He told me there were all these criteria that he had required in order to set up a monastery in a particular place. And one of them was, how do the people actually relate to the monks? And so fairly soon there was a sense of when the monks were in White Salmon, just visiting, there was a good feeling about it. There was a welcomeness to the people who were in town. And so that was another reason of wanting to settle here. But one of the things that's been a theme for me since I've been practicing here is just thinking about gratitude and how gratitude works, and developing gratitude, and also understanding how it's not necessarily something that's one is born with, that it's something that some people might have more an aptitude with, but it is something to be cultivated and developed. So it relates to this word, katanyu, and katawedi, but primarily we think of katanyu as the main word. Now that just means being grateful. But it's interesting, I think I've spoken a little bit about this before, but the definition of grateful, or katanyu, in Pali is that you understand what's been done, or you know what's been done. So that's interesting, because sometimes when we think about gratitude, we don't think about it with that specific quality of like, know what's been done. We're just sort of like, oh, I'm really happy that this person, gave this to me, or helped me in this way, or we look back. And that knowing quality is interesting, because I think it has to do with like kindness. So in order to be grateful, you have to recognize kindness. And in order to recognize kindness, you have to know what kindness is. Right? You have to actually identify it with other people. And in so doing, that's sort of a reciprocal loop, helping you cultivate kindness in yourself. And, oh, this has been done to me or for me. That's sort of katanyu means what's been done for me, what's been done. And so that relationship to kindness is very important, because then we can say, we get to identify it as something that's beneficial for us. Someone was kind to me. And then we also were working on trust, because when people do things that are good for us or helpful to us, they spend a little bit more time, or they go out of their way to help, or whatever it is, they give us something. Like for many of you who are part of the Hermitage, you're often giving something. And there's that recognition of like, oh, okay, there's an authentic kindness there. It's not a manipulated giving, right? Because sometimes people will give in order to get something. They'll give in order to kind of like, it's like sort of a bribe, or sort of seen as something that is like a trade, rather than the highest form of giving is when we don't expect something in return. So that often people, when they have that's the kindness of that comes through, and we see, oh, this person is wanting to genuinely give me something, and doesn't want something in return. That's the difference between a trade and a gift, right? So the thing that's interesting about gratitude is, I think many of you can identify that there's probably times in your life that you are not experiencing gratitude. So you might identify this throughout your day. Just like there are times you might just take for granted things that you assume are there for you, or are going to be there. So as I was beginning the talk or talking about this, I might say the monks come back every day from alms round around between 9:30, and I expect they're going to bring food. So I expect, okay, there's going to be food. It's been offered by kind people. But because that happens every day, and has happened every single day, pretty much, for my being a monk, there are a few days that, well, there's sometimes I've fasted, but still, the sense is 99% of the time, I'm fed every day. And so that just comes with an expectation of just normalcy. So I can become ungrateful if I don't recognize the gift, or I don't see it as a gift. If I don't, I just say, oh, this is just part of my life, this is what I do, yada, yada, yada. Rather like, oh, okay, there's a possibility that this wasn't going to occur, or this isn't going to occur, or things might change, which is the other side. We have a sense of anicca, then we're grateful for things being the same, right? But it's when when we're with different family members or we're with different friends, and they're always there, we can count on them, we often start to forget that that's not necessarily the case. And so this thing about katanyu and katawedi, gratefulness or gratitude, is that it is something to be cultivated, to actually bring up in your minds. And I would say if one is not doing that regularly or finding that feeling of gratefulness within oneself, then something is most likely lacking in your experience. And I can say that for myself as well, that I identify the same thing. When I start to see ungratefulness or just expectation for things as they are, then I start to really lose this buoyancy effect of what gratefulness provides for me, which is a feeling of like happiness and a sense of goodwill towards other people. That knowing that something's been done, it's that it's a really interesting phrase, like knowing what's been done, because you just think about the opposite of that, not knowing what's been done. And there's so many little things that are done for us. Most of us don't live in isolation. Even if we go and we buy food and we eat it, then we can still think about where that food came from, right? Or any of the materials we use in our lives. Or some of us often will forget our parents. We often have complicated relationships with our parents, whether they're living or they're not. It's not so clear. Most of our parents weren't enlightened, so they made some mistakes, and we've had to live with forgiving them around some of those mistakes. Also remembering that they probably forgave us for a lot of mistakes we made. But that sense of katanyu can often leave someone like a parent out, where we just to sort of take for granted the sense of like, oh yeah, like my dad's done so much for me, or my mom did so much, and or we can find a lot of gratitude for a particular person. We can be very inspired, like for a teacher or something. But then again, we forget about this, I would say, like unparalleled and enormous gratitude for someone who raised us. Now, there are going to be some people that don't have that story, that there was some very strong difficulty in childhood. But most of us can identify some caregiver that we had during our childhood that was helpful to us. And in doing that, we can start to recognize, if we haven't already, that sense of like, okay, all these things that were done, they're just almost overwhelming when you actually think about what a parent's done for a child. Like just astounding, amazing. And then there's, so if we, like if for those of us like myself, who don't have children, it doesn't mean that also for ourselves we don't think about like the goodness that we bring to having our own children. We can, it's not like, of course that's not there, but there is still like the goodness that we bring to other people, the kindness that we bring to other people. So there's also recognizing our own giving, and that's sort of part and parcel of how gratitude works. You can't be generous and giving and kind with others if you don't identify the goodness that's been given to you. So it's a full circle. It's this full circle kind of cultivation of like knowing that others have done good for you, identifying that kindness, and then seeing in yourself, oh, I want to be kind like that. I want to emulate that kindness. And so each time then when we do notice this, we get this knowing quality around it, then we go, oh, wow, that feels so good. There's a sense of turning it towards others then, because it becomes even more useful in that way. Gratitude becomes useful in that way when we then do something with it. We don't necessarily just feel good about it. So how can I do the same for others? Imbibe that trust that others have, that kindness that others have given me. So it's something I think that is extremely important for for our path. And as I said earlier, if it's not something that's being brought up quite often and cultivated, like worked on, worked through, brought up, then I think sometimes it can be a reason for a lack of happiness, a lack of a sense of like, I don't have a recognition of like sort of the goodness of the world, the goodness that we've been given. And so in certain ways, we also, we're looking at what we're doing and we're looking at what others have done for us, and we're just kind of recognizing this. And so through that recognition, then the mind is buoyed, the mind is brought to a sense of like lightness, and it's not sort of dragged down. It also is the opposite, it brings up the opposite of selfishness. So generosity is cultivated when we start to identify gratefulness. We're grateful for others. We're grateful for their actions and what they've done. But we also start to see how we're also happy with what we do for others and how we help others. So being at the Pacific Hermitage, it has helped me in that way specifically identify more specifically around the alms round in the community here, because when I've lived at Abhayagiri, it's helpful for me to bring up gratitude, and it's there, but it is harder. It's been a bit easier here at the Hermitage because there is just a closeness, like with where do the gifts of the monastery come from, especially around food. The fact that I've been here for a year, if I didn't have that kindness for other people and I tried to live here for a year, then I would probably be dead. So all of you have been helping me live and provided me with life. So that's an important aspect of thinking about gratitude is really like it just has a more personal feeling to it. And I know for the monks, what we don't get at Abhayagiri is we don't know. We know the people who might be offering the food, but we don't know what they've actually made or done. But with some of you, we get your names on the Tupperware. So, so this is from Shelley, this is from Colleen, this is from Susan. Susan. We have two Susans. And Anna, who's not with us tonight, and yeah, just so many. Casey, and just all the people who just continue to offer us, and then those who come on the weekends, and it's very special. Joseph and Kalyani, they've been offering for years, and they're like the first resident right out of or they're like maybe 4 houses or 5 houses down on the block, and like so it's like that close. It's amazing like how so many of you are like it's really local, and I've talked to many of you about this that's not common at all in any of our monasteries. So there's no monastery where we can actually, or it's been done where there's a regular going out, like on a 20-minute walk from the monastery, and then a bunch of people who want to offer you food. So that's just very special. And then, of course, just also recognizing just all the other kindnesses, and like we have stewards, Jean-Marc and Bruce are currently our stewards. Keith did it for, I think, almost a decade, 8 years. You were a steward, 8 years, 7 years. It's a long time. Yeah. Casey and Colleen were the Donna coordinators as well. So there's all these gifts, and there's all these reasons to reflect on this gratitude and this kindness, and not to mention, I think all of you in this room who've been part of the Hermitage in one way or another, have given some sort of gift of your kindness. Just recognizing that and being aware of it. it is very uplifting. It feels very good. And so the little, I don't think I do much as a monk, so there can be a feeling a little bit of undeserving, but I can also just say, well, even if I'm undeserving, I still appreciate it. I'm still very happy for it. And yeah, so it's there. Also, I can have gratitude for just the fact that I am a monk and I can be a monk, but that it is sort of a line of work that allows me to find gratefulness probably a bit more easily, just because of the position that I'm in. I can't live without kindness, and so that's been a very special aspect of my life, and something I'm quite happy for, something I think I would have missed out on if I had not become a monk. And sorry if I missed anyone in those names. I'm sure there's somebody there I'm thinking of. Well, actually, there's somebody who's important in that list, which is Kathy, who's hosted us here at Yoga Samadhi and has also given alms round, and is also probably the reason that a lot of you are involved in the Hermitage. She kind of, I think one of the stories that you've probably heard is Ajahn Cunda came and asked her when she was managing the studio, oh, what do you think if maybe we came and could we rent the space for maybe like once a month? And she's like, oh, well, you don't have to rent it, but can you come like twice a week? oh, okay. Okay. That sounds okay. So yeah, it's it's been very good. So I'm really happy that the Hermitage has not just survived, but thrived here. And now, hopefully, Ajahn Cunda is going to build another kuti, another little cabin for himself that he'll have. And it's not another cabin for himself. It's a cabin for the senior monk in the monastery. And when I said another cabin for himself, it's not like he's going to have two. A vacation cabin at the Hermitage. So, yeah. But it's great because Ajahn Cunda hasn't had he hasn't had like a kuti that fulfills his needs as much as this one that he's planning on building, hopefully this year. So I have a lot of happiness and mudita for him if that ends up working out. I hope it does. To build that this year or possibly next year if it doesn't work out. So I think that's all. I just want to express my own gratitude and really happy to have spent a year here. I don't find that it was something that I regretted in any way, and in fact, that the gratefulness that comes up is a sense of like, oh yeah, this was a good choice. You know, I was asked to do it, but it was a good choice to have said yes, and also that I came back for the winter was really nice. So, just very happy to have spent time with all of you. And even though I didn't see you on alms round, it was, or all necessarily around White Salmon, I was able to see many of you here when I was here, or perhaps on the live stream. So that was a very nice and important connection for me. So thank you for that. Is there anything from Ajahn Titapanyo, Ajahn Kaspa, or anything? Okay. Okay. Ajahn Titapanyo, although he's leaving, he has made an effort to say his goodbyes on the alms round, so that was really nice. There are two questions I have, but I'm going to wait for those because they're sort of off subject a bit. I was wondering if anybody wanted to say anything from the studio, the yoga studio, not the live stream studio. Yes, Shelley.
I was startled when you were talking about gratitude and kindness, and I realized that don't really offer out of kindness. I offer out of gratitude.
Hmm?
And I'm really, really serious about it. And the flip side, and the gratitude that you've brought, the monks, have brought the Dhamma here. And of course, on the flip side, there's that fear that you're going to leave. You as being you, the monks. Of course, you personally too. I regret that you're leaving, but I'm hopeful that you continue your journey somewhere that's very appropriate for you.
Mm.
Can't be stuck in white salmon forever. Just kidding. But yeah, I think I really do have seen, at least for myself, and I think I speak for other people, that it's what has been brought to us is so important.
Mm.
And I guess I don't think of it so much as a two-way street. But I suppose it is.
Well, you mentioned kindness as not being a part of. You say you give out of gratefulness, but not out of kindness.
Well, that's how. Yeah, it's kind of how I'm so grateful that you've brought it down.
But I think you're probably missing the kindness then that's there, because the point is, I think one can't have gratitude without identifying kindness. I guess it's possible that you could kind of ignore it. But there's a recognition of maybe you're giving, because if there's gratitude, there's a sense of kindness from the other person. So who you're giving to, you're identifying kindness, right, for what's been done.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But you're also identifying, if you look into your own mind, a sense of your interest in wanting to give. Gratefulness comes from a sense of kindness to others, right? So you're offering something.
Yeah, I heard you say that. I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Felt that.
Yeah, so I would say try to tune into it, so you can feel oh yeah, this is a kind thing I'm doing. When we're offering ourselves up, this is what chaga is. This is you're giving something up, right? Your generosity. There's sort of dana, but there's also dana of giving, giving of yourself, maybe something that is not so easy to give or something like that. So you're letting go as well. But I think that there can come a sense of kindness out of that. So just try to maybe look for it, or even say ask yourself, is this kind? And do you think that, I'd look back and say, no, this isn't kind. You're not being kind. It doesn't really match up, So, yeah. Yes?
I've been very grateful the way that you personalize your Dhamma.
Oh, thank you.
You talk about things that are going on in your life, and that's really been special. I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I often, I've found that that's really helpful for me to talk about the Dhamma in that way, because I do sometimes not go in that direction, and it loses a heart quality. So I actually stay with the Dhamma and with my focus of what I'm actually saying and doing when I'm doing that. So I found it helpful for me in order to share and actually sort of concretize what it is I'm actually trying to talk about. So thank you for that appreciation, to encourage me to keep doing that. I'm happy that it's been helpful.
Very helpful.
Good, very good. Yes, Susan.
Thank you for coming and sharing your wisdom with all of us. It's been very valuable. Each of you has your own personalities and they always shine through. I hope to send you healing to your feet so you'll be walking on the
Thank you very much, yeah. I'm happy that each of us can offer something. And yeah, my feet did recover once after 7 years. And then I did some very stupid things, which had to do with a lack of gratitude. I think it had to do with, which is interesting. We can do that with our own bodies. It's just taking something for granted. Oh, I'm better now, so therefore this won't happen again. And so also I think that gratitude extends to our own bodies and the fact that we keep living possibly in a healthy way, and that it's not always the case that that's going to be, or we can rely on our bodies to be healthy. So one of the main points the Buddha teaches about is don't make the health of your body a refuge. So I do hope I can recover a bit. But also I have to say, what a great teaching it's been. I mean, really amazing teaching, just to not have something work in the body, and eventually just, I mean, gone through the surrender of it. And also, like, for me, it's like, yeah, it's kind of a big deal, you can't walk, but there's a lot bigger deals, you know, like cancer, or, you know, just something that is chronic pain or things like that. So just knowing, like, oh, okay, I can still be really grateful and happy with how my body is. So that's, yeah, sort of good enough. Good enough. And I think the Dhamma is helping with that a bit. And, well, more than a bit. Yeah. Yeah, but thank you for sending that healing wish. Is there anything on the live stream?
There's one question, it's not on topic.
Okay. We'll hear that, and then I'll
Okay,
just do that.
so I think I'll try to rephrase it to make it a little more clear. So basically, Random Ramblings asks, basically he meditates, and while he's meditating, high priority urgent tasks will pop into his head, or questions that he wants to ask the monks. So his question is, when that happens, is it most skillful to write these things down immediately, or to ignore them during meditation?
So the question was about when you're meditating, that high priority, like sort of to-do things come up, or questions he wants to ask the monks. And is it better to kind of stop meditating and write these down, or is it better to ignore them? I guess the third option is write them down after the meditation. Well, this is quite normal. These two, I mean, both things like can be like wanting to ask a question of somebody who has more, you have a sense who has more knowledge than you, and then also just the sense of, yeah, just like what the many things that we need to do come up, and that the latter of those, the many things we have to do, is very common. It's like you're meditating, and for most people, we can be grateful we're not in a country that's facing war right now, and we can generally sit in a location. And I want to say, well, that's not necessarily true in our own country. It's not always people can actually find quiet places to sit. There can be a lot going on, and what could even be like in certain places, warlike conditions. But for those of us that are in conditions when we can be kind of in a semi-quiet space or safe space, the mind will then want to do something. It sort of like feels like, oh, okay, there's sort of quiet here, there's safety, therefore I need to do something. And that doing can be figuring out what it is I need to do. Like, okay, this is the time and place. And I remember one person saying that to me, like, well, isn't that what meditation's for? Like, you finally have a quiet time in your daily schedule where you can kind of sit down and prioritize everything. But he was smiling when he said that, and he knew the answer was no. So it's not, meditation it's not for that purpose. In fact, it's to let go of that intention around what our life's priorities are. So those are just the content, that's just the usual content of the mind, and it's often just kind of going around in circles, like, oh, what do I have to do, and who do I have to talk to, and I have these calls, I get these emails, or whatever it might be. Gotta go shopping, I do laundry, and on it goes. So meditation is more of a time where, even though it was asked about high priority items, I would say it's a time where we are letting go of that sense of what we have to do. And what we have to do in meditation is the sort of high priority of meditation is pay attention to our own experiences, so we have a closer sense of how we're causing ourselves to get into trouble, or what the Buddha uses as the word dukkha. So we get into ways of thinking or doing our activities that aren't helpful to us. They cause us detrimental harm. And we can't see that clearly if we're continuing to respond to the mind being like, get active, keep going, you have to figure this out. And so if there's anything to be figured out, it's how to figure out, not figuring things out. So it's just like letting go of that to-do mind. I have to get something and do something and be something and get somewhere. And meditation is more where we're staying at a still point where we can witness or see this sort of process occurring, this sense of like the mind jumping around and getting out and trying to resolve things in ways that aren't actually helpful for us. And that's where we see where like desire is sort of the main thing that's driving us, a sort of unwholesome desire, I would say. So yeah, I think the main thing is not to write something down, and the other thing is not to ignore it, because if you're ignoring it, then you're like trying to push it away. More, look at the desire, look at how this, one is to identify the dukkha, the sort of like, well, isn't that stress? That thing, I have to get this question out, or I have to figure this out. That's stressful. There's a feeling of stress there. It's called agitation. It's like activity. You've got to be active. You've got to do something. So we're trying to calm the mind and create peacefulness. And the way that we do that is not through ignoring, but just watching from a more dispassionate place. Like, oh yeah, there it goes. I got to write that one down. That's a really good question. I should ask the monk. Oh yeah, that's so good. I really should go and find a pen and paper. And then you just get up, So you don't want to do that. And so try to just be patient with that and say like, okay, well, if the question is important enough, I'll remember it at the end of the meditation, and I'll write it down then. If it's not important enough, then it's not going to maintain itself in my memory. It's not that pressing. And again, if these to-do things, these high priority items, again, if they're that pressing, we really don't need to bring them up in meditation, because they're already there. They're already kind of going around. That's what we're trying to do, is sort of put the clutch in. The gears are just going and going and going. You put the clutch in, you take sort of the belt out of the gears. That's probably not the exact way of describing it, but the point is you don't keep going with the gears. And so you just disengage. And then you allow your mind to kind of like quiet, so that it can actually see later on, perhaps, oh, what is really a priority? What is really important to me? If you're not doing that and you're just giving into these kind of desires to keep responding to the mind, then you're just gonna go into these automatic directions, and it's not gonna really be very helpful with meditation at all. So stop doing that. Anything else?
One more question. Hello, Ajahn. I'd like to ask, does the desire to experience a certain emotion count as sensual desire?
Does a desire to experience a certain emotion count as sensual desire? Well, I think it depends on whether the desire, emotions are sensual, right? So they are based on sensing the body, right? But so I don't think that needs to necessarily be talked about too much. You know, there's the sense of touch or feeling that we have. The experience of what an emotion is a bunch of different kind of like activities in our body going off at once, and we're saying that's happiness, or that's jealousy, or that's fear. You know, we identify like, oh, there's a way that we feel the body, and we say, oh, that's fear, and we know that fear has like, you feel it in your stomach or your chest. Often, most of our emotions are felt in those areas, but like even our whole body and musculature can change around fear, and we identify that, we feel that. Anyway, so that is a sensual experience, but in terms of sensual pleasure, I think that it just depends on your motivation and your desire, like what that's for. So some things can be cultivated in a good way, and so like some emotions are actually good to cultivate. So we'd say happiness, a feeling of well-being, feelings of safety, feelings of non-ill will, a sense of like happiness for others, a sense of caring or compassion for others. These are, or like feelings of wanting to be generous, wanting to be kind, wanting to be helpful. These are also things that we can see as like they have an emotional content to them, and we do want to cultivate them. So I do think that is not always a problem, and actually should be cultivated. You know, I want to dispel hate, and I want to bring in happiness, kindness, goodness towards others. Things like that are kind of you see, like you're trying to kind of rebalance things for yourself in a healthy way. There's a couple of questions here that I got just the last couple of days. One is, what mental health conditions can be worsened by meditation? And I was a mental health counselor before I became a monk, but I'm not an expert on this. However, I did know that like there are I did read that, like, I think this is a total random statistic, but it was something like 1 in 12 people have worsened conditions through meditation, or meditation is worse for them. I think that's a pretty random number. I mean, how do you actually categorize what's worse for somebody, and how long that they might do it before it turns around? Or like, people will sometimes say, like, meditation's really bad for me. Like, I notice that I'm really anxious and fearful and depressed when I meditate, so it's just terrible for me. It's like, well, it's when you're not meditating that's happening too. So meditation is actually helping you identify that, so you can see into it and gain some kind of awareness and space around it, and then you sort of start to say, oh, like, right, there's this me, and there's this kind of sense of what I'm experiencing, and moments of safety that come out of that. So, yeah, I don't know if I would ascribe always like a statistic like that, because it depends what you mean by not being helpful or worse, make something being worse for someone. But there are definitely ways that meditation can be worse for someone. I think in certain ways, like too much meditation, or mismeditating, right? And the Buddha even talks about that in one sutta. It's very funny. He talks about this particular monk mismeditating, over-meditating, premeditating, and there's a lot of ways you can mismeditate. But my own experience with being a mental health counselor and working with certain people is that people who have psychosis or schizoid affective, or have been diagnosed in that way, we don't need to get into kind of whether diagnoses are actually real or not, but more like those sensitive people saying they hear voices, or they see visions, they see visual things that aren't there, that others can't see, or that kind of bleeding over of the self like from that sort of sense of schizoaffective disorder, not being able to necessarily differentiate self. Those can be exacerbated through meditation, and so those aren't necessarily recommended to people who have those conditions. Maybe in such like a grand way, it's like, this is a great answer for something. It's like, well, just try it a little bit and see if it, how does a little bit work? How does a little bit help? Does it calm the voices down? So I think for some of those people it can really help, but others it can make things worse. But again, it's like, how much medicine do you take? You take a little bit or a lot. So I think it depends on each person, and I definitely wouldn't say that that it's something like you can kind of categorize, like these people shouldn't try meditation. But also, in general, just for all of us, whatever condition we have, if you're meditating and you're feeling like things are actually like, in a way, becoming worse for you, you're less able to function because of that, then you want to kind of come back from what you're doing. You might be doing too much, or too much of something the wrong way. So I think that tailoring meditation in that effect is kind of always being aware of, like, am I doing too much of this? It's like one of the things that we do in our practice as monks is we have something called an Asubha practice, which is a focus on like what's unbeautiful. And that's just essentially to work with lust, like feeling too much lust. So you have, or even just generally desire for things. When you kind of focus on unbeautiful elements of the body, usually our own bodies, think of like something like your liver or my liver. You don't think of my liver, you think of your liver. So if you think about it, it's kind of like, I know people have a sense of like, oh, the human body is a kingdom, and it's so beautiful, and it's a temple, and it's if I cut out your liver and I hand it to you in your hands, you're not going to think of that. You're going to think, just let's kind of take out the horrifying element of taking it out, but just that if you were able to hold your liver in your hand, it's sticky, it's wet, it's kind of warm, and and it's like this goo coming out all over you, and it's not pleasant. It's just not pleasant. So when we have lust for other people's bodies, especially for a monk or a nun, you don't want to do that. That's part of our lifestyle of like, you don't want to go there. It's not helpful. That's something we're trying not to cultivate. And so we're balancing that out with something like this. So we might use our own bodies or visions of our own bodies, or we concentrate on the elements like earth, air, water, fire. And we try to kind of more calm that lust down or desire down. So I guess what I'm saying is like, there's certain ways that we use meditation in order to handle difficult states. And so just like that, when you're learning meditation or trying meditation, you are trying to balance things out, and so you don't want to go too far in one direction. So with Asubha, what I was just mentioning, the meditation on beautiful, one can also go too far with that. And so that actually happened in the suttas, in a very kind of surprising sutta where the Buddha went away for a little while. And these monks were practicing this meditation so much that they were practicing it way too much. And they got so disgusted with their bodies that they ended up killing themselves. Well, actually, they were afraid to kill themselves directly, so they hired somebody else to kill themselves. So this actually happened. The Buddha came out of his retreat. He's like, why are there so few bhikkhus when there used to be a lot more? And then this was explained to him. And then he said, okay, let's get back to breath meditation. I'm going to teach you breath meditation. So the point of that story is you can go too far, and one has to figure out what's best for oneself. And that doesn't mean that Asubha meditation, for example, is bad. It just means you use it to the degree that it's helpful, and then you stop using it when it's unhelpful. And these monks, unfortunately, didn't know what was unhelpful, so it was too late. So just keeping that in mind with all of us, no matter what we're doing with meditation, we want to also be measuring, like, not as a sense of like, are we experiencing pain and difficulty, because that can be part of it, right? We're working with that. Now, so dukkha is kind of our response to pain, like it shouldn't be this way. And we're getting used to that sense of it shouldn't be this way and saying like, why do I feel that way? That's what dukkha is, not the actual pain. But the point is that if you start to meditate and you're actually feeling like you're regressing in certain ways, you're not able to deal with your life, or even it's just making your possibility of dealing with others or yourself more difficult, then tailor it back, step back from it. The other question on here was about mantra use, and when I was kind of a Christian, I did this Greek Orthodox technique of repetitive short prayers. It was supposed to lead inwards. Silence in prayer would drop at some point on its own. If you did it really well, you were supposed to get visions and stuff. Because of this prior habit, I find mantras easier than breath meditation. Just to check, even from the Orthodox Theravada viewpoint, doing, for example, simple mantras of the Tibetans is that basically just a fine practice? Do you think the Greek Orthodox prayer thing is a samadhi practice? Yes, I do think the use of mantras that you're describing for the Greek Orthodox method there, or any method in religions, is a samadhi practice. And it's just that it's bringing, what that means is bring a focus to the mind. The mind is being more focused, it's collected around good qualities, rather than kind of dispersed and moving out. So just saying it, yeah, I believe, and I've heard others say that these are all samadhi. Whether it's right samadhi or not depends. Depends on what one is practicing. And no, there's no the Orthodox Theravada viewpoint on that. I mean, we do mantras too. So, for example, like oftentimes we recite a word or something that could be anything from like peace or kindness, or it could be something like Bhutto, which just means awake. That's very common. So in the Thai, specifically the Thai tradition, that's all some monks are taught. Just say Bhutto continuously. So one of the most famous Thai monks in Thailand who died a few years ago, I think he lived till he was 98 or 99 or something. But he would just say Bhutto a lot. Like that was his main practice. All the time, just Bhutto, 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 Bhutto. Similarly to the nada sound, there's no, thought and emotion have a hard time kind of getting in there to a certain degree, or I'd say unwholesome thoughts and emotions. There's not too many places for them to land. So that kind of mantra, or even several words together, we use mantras when we recite metta. May I be well, may I be happy. Eventually, with metta, that exactly happens. Like eventually, maybe you'll just settle on a word, happy. And then that word can disappear completely, and all you're left with is this feeling, this emotional feeling of metta. And then that is what the mind actually focuses on. And then that can spread throughout the entire body. And you can have visions and stuff. But that's not the intention. The intention of what we're doing that's kind of like it's just a condition. It's something that can occur, like having a visual experience or other experiences. And the Buddha really cautioned any kind of practitioner to say, like, well, yeah, these are interesting things, and they can but they don't get too caught up in them, because it's just going to lead you towards getting distracted. So it's not the intention. The intention is always around not suffering, not feeling, not creating stress for oneself, or distress, or a sense of discontent, or things, how we often create for ourselves. Just things should be better than I think they should be, or better than they are. Anything else from the live stream?
No more questions.
Okay, very good. Anything from anyone else? Yeah. Okay, we've gone a little bit over, so again, want to just extend my heartfelt wishes to all of you, and Also invite you, if you want to come over on Sunday the 3rd, just inviting people. Holly's going to be offering the meal that day, but I'm sure she'd appreciate some help if other people want to come on that day to the Hermitage from usually like 10:15, 10:30 to 1:30, 2 o'clock. It's open, so if you like stopping by, that's great. And if not, that's also just fine. You can meet Tantisro as well. He'll be there. Okay. Yes, be well. And as Lumpur Sumedho says, goodbye forever.